Kirby spoke with the media. Practice is happening, and there's already news for UGA football spring practice. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Locked On Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Daniel. Clint is off, but we're still here talking about Georgia football, and there's never been a better time to talk about Georgia football because the Georgia football team is back to practice. Spring practice is underway, 15 practices over the next 5 weeks, culminating in, we think, G-Day. Kirby Smart, I don't know, maybe just trying to be obstinate in his presser, hinted that maybe we wouldn't do G-Day. Who knows? But we think culminating in a spring game later in April. And want to thank you for being here. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Intuit TurboTax. It is, of course, that time, and so we'll talk more about them in a second. Want to thank you for being a first listener. If you make this podcast your first listen of every day, if you're an everydayer, if you're here every single day, you know Clint and I are here every single day, and so you should be as well. And of course, if you are a member of the 199, a loyal third segment listener, you stay all the way to the end. We appreciate you. And let me just be the first to welcome you back to spring practice. This is the shorter of the two off seasons. So the window between the end of the Sugar Bowl and the beginning of spring practice, it feels short. It's condensed. I know it's because it's basketball season. It's because there's a lot of other things going on. So you have distractions. But this has been the shorter of the two off seasons. Now we'll have spring practice, which is a full-on season for Georgia football. There's going to be news. We're going to have stuff to talk about. We're going to have practice reports. We're going to be getting eyes on players. And so there'll be plenty for us to digest. And then we'll enter into the longer of the two off seasons, the dog days of summer, when we won't have all that much to distract us. But for right now, it is a big time to be a Georgia fan. Obviously, Mike White and the Bulldogs, recording this on a Wednesday afternoon, are about to tip it off in the NCAA tournament here in Nashville. You know that your boy is going to be there, and so I'm excited to watch that tonight. Headed to the NCAA tournament after that. Exciting time for Georgia basketball and the beginning of spring practice. Kirby meets with the media, and he's got lots of interesting things to say. He talked about Pro Day. There were some very interesting comments made at Pro Day. We'll probably leave that for another episode, but let me just say this. Warren Brinson said a thing at Pro Day that made me feel some significant feelings. I will just tell you that. Listen, you can take it with a grain of salt. You can take it however you will, but when he said what he said, the needle moved for me. I felt some significant feelings. So we'll probably be talking about that at some point. But let's get to what I think are the biggest takeaways from what Kirby said when he met with the media at the beginning of spring practice. And the first is with a returning player to the team, but probably almost viewed like a brand new player to this Georgia team, because it's been so long that he's been absent, and two, I'm not sure anybody really knew the status. Nobody was really counting on Colby Young to come back and be a part of this Georgia football team this season, but Colby Young is a part of this Georgia football team this season. He's practicing with the team. He's a full go with the team. All signs point to he is going to be a full-fledged member of the 2025 Georgia Bulldogs football team. Kirby used the words fully cleared, meaning that there are no more legal obstacles standing in the way of Colby Young participating in football this year. The fact that he's still on campus right now, I think, speaks volumes to how he feels about Georgia, how he feels about Coach Coley, how he feels about Coach Smart, how he feels about this whole system, the way that he's been supported through this process. And so Colby Young looks to be suiting it up for Georgia in 2025, and I don't have to tell you that of all the positions on the roster, wide receiver is the one of greatest need for the University of Georgia. There's been a lot of turnover, and much of that turnover, to be honest, Georgia fans are rejoicing about. We're rejoicing that some players are not coming back next year, but we need more talented weapons, and Colby Young offers us some versatility and some flexibility that without him, Georgia was kind of going to have their backs up against the wall, so to speak, in a couple of areas. And so let's jump into what the person that I think will be the biggest beneficiary of Colby Young coming back, and that is the red zone numbers for the University of Georgia. We mentioned it last on one of our previous episodes. Georgia really struggled in two very key areas. One was third down production, and one was red zone production. Both of those abysmal in terms of statistical performances from last year. The wide receivers had a lot to do with that. Georgia's inability to run the ball also had a lot to do with that. But the performance of the quarterback and the wide receivers also played a significant role in that. You bring in Noah Thomas from Texas A&M. He's a big body. He's a touchdown getter. That's who he was at Texas A&M. He led the team in touchdowns last year, and we expected that he was going to come in and be immediately that type of a weapon as well, playing at the X position. Now you bring back Colby Young, who was that last year. He's already been what Noah Thomas has already been at Texas A&M. So now you have not one but two proven, tall, big body, catch radius, red zone weapons who have not, it's not only on paper do they look like they would be difficult to match up with in the red zone. That's one thing. But this is at the SEC level. They have proven in Colby Young's first several games with the team last year, as well as Noah Thomas's entire production history at Texas A&M, they have proven that they are legitimate red zone problems for defenses in the SEC. Now you have the ability to put both of those guys on the field at the same time. We already mentioned how we think that Oscar Delp needs to be utilized more efficiently by Mike Bobo and staff in the red zone in order to maximize his skill set. I had said on the tight end episode that we did not too long ago, which you can go back and listen to or watch on YouTube, I had said that I thought Oscar Delp was our best red zone weapon. But now Georgia's got the ability, think about this, to put in 3 6'4", 6'5", big body, long arms, tall, difficult to match up with wideouts, one on the left, one in the center, and one on the right. It just creates, you don't have enough guys who can go up and high point the football on defense in order to cover everyone. And so Gunnar Stockton's ability to simply find the guy that's in the best matchup and get him the ball in a position where he can go up and get it. I think Noah Thomas's numbers are going to suffer greatly because Colby Young is here. But I think Georgia's red zone offense, which is far more important to anyone than Noah Thomas's numbers, I think Georgia's red zone offense is going to be a huge beneficiary of the Colby Young return. The fact that he is back, I was going to say his decision to return, but the fact that he's now cleared and able to return, I think Georgia's red zone will be the biggest beneficiary. I'm going to talk about some other aspects of Colby Young coming back that I think are important, and then I'm going to talk about another player who's going to miss the spring and what I think that means for his position. But first, I want to let you know about these. And these are, in fact, Intuit TurboTax. I mentioned them at the top, but taxes are used to be about waiting and worrying if you were going to get all of your money back, and then you waited and worried some more, and then you waited and worried some more. But now taxes with TurboTax removes all of that. When you file with TurboTax, you're matched with a TurboTax TurboTax expert who does your taxes and gets you your maximum return, an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention. And so, and works specifically on your return, and you get real-time updates on their progress as you go about your day. So now your taxes are out of your hands and into the hands of an expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every single one of your taxes in every place that you need, and everything with 100% guaranteed accuracy. All you do is get the most amount of money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. That is how you do your taxes with an expert from TurboTax. Now only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates in iOS mobile app. See the guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantee. All right, so Colby Young returns. I mentioned the red zone offense. I think it's the most important aspect of this for the University of Georgia, but I want to talk about some other aspects, and that is what it does for a guy like Dillon Bell. Now, as of right now, if you were to project the depth chart, I think that you would project Noah Thomas starting at the X, and then Dillon Bell starting on the other side at what Georgia calls the Z receiver. It's just the other side. And then somebody, whether it's Jacoby White, whether it's Zachariah Branch, whether it's the true freshman Talon Taylor, somebody in there in the star or in the slot, in the slot position. Now, there's obviously other factors. There's other guys. Nitro Tuggle is a guy that we mentioned that we really like a lot. There's guys like Cole Spear, who I think is due. There's guys like London Humphrey, who have also proven that they can be an effective weapon. All of those guys, I think, are legitimate options on the outsides, except for Dillon Bell. I think Georgia's best offense is an offense where Dillon Bell is given the freedom to be versatile and moved around. I think that is his greatest skill set. If Dillon Bell is forced to line up and at one position for an entire game, an entire season, I think you have basically tied Dillon Bell's right hand behind his back, because the thing that he does so well is everything pretty well. He's able to run the football pretty well. He's able to, go in motion, drop inside and play in the slot. He's able to line up in the backfield and run routes out of the backfield. I would love to see an offense where you've got guys like Noah Thomas and Nitro Tuggle and Colby Young, and then maybe London Humphrey and maybe Cole Spear, depending on how they develop. But you've got those three guys, and they are taking the primary bulk of the snaps at the X and the Z. And now you have your slot receivers, right? Zachariah Branch and Talon Taylor. And I think Georgia's very talented in the slot, even though they do lose Anthony Evans. But I think you've got those slot guys. And then you take Dillon Bell and you just sort of sprinkle him around. You put him in the backfield occasionally. You put him in the slot occasionally. You go 4 wide occasionally, and you drop Dillon Bell in there. You put him in motion pre-snap. You've got those corners on the outside occupied by now not one, but 2 really true outside receivers in Colby Young and Noah Thomas. Throw in a Nitro Tuggle in there. I don't hate it at all. And now you're able to use Dillon Bell in such a better way. I think this Colby Young return is a lot bigger than just Colby Young. I think it opens up the field. And I think what we saw last year with Georgia's issues at wide receiver, one of which was they couldn't catch the ball. Okay, flat out. But I think one of the issues was that Dillon Bell was by far the best receiver on the team last year. And no disrespect to Dillon Bell. If Dillon Bell is your best wide receiver on the team, you have huge problems at wide receiver. He is versatile. He is useful. He is effective. He is valuable. But he shouldn't be your best wide receiver. his best attribute is the fact that you can use him in a number of places. If you're locked in to putting him at the Z because you ain't got nobody else that can play over there, well, you've just ruined Dillon Bell, for lack of a better term. And so I love this news for Georgia. One, because it means red zone productivity, and ultimately the name of the game is converting on third downs and scoring points, keeping drives alive, putting the ball in the end zone. And two, because I think it's going to open up the offense a lot more. Like I said, what about a two-back set where Dillon Bell is one of your backs? I love that because you can hand him the ball. With Nate Frazier in the backfield, you can hand him the ball, or he's going to be a great route runner matched up against a middle linebacker. Are you kidding me? Dillon Bell matched up against a middle linebacker? Yes, please give me more of that. Why wouldn't you do that? Some 4 wide receiver sets where you got guys like Dillon Bell floating around out there, and you got 2 true outside guys. You know, you're rotating those 3 guys into 2 positions. I like this a lot for Georgia's offense. I think it opens things up for Mike Bobo. We've already said this is kind of a prove-it year for Mike Bobo. He's got the guys, and now Colby Young coming back only further validates that he's got the guys in order for this offense to be exactly what they need to be. And so it will be interesting to see how Georgia utilizes their wide receivers. I'll be watching closely in the spring. You should too. And as we get closer to fall camp, it will be fascinating to see who is lined up where and what this Colby Young news means for a guy like Dillon Bell, because I think it could be huge for him to return to the versatile weapon of Dillon Bell that we saw 2 years ago, as opposed to what we saw last year. All right, I got another position, another player, and another position group of intense need, and I'm going to talk about what a lack of depth in the spring may mean for the fall coming up right after these. But first, let's talk about Factor meals. Are you looking to optimize your nutrition this year? Spoiler alert, you are. Factor makes eating easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 different options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto. Plus, Factor offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. Factor meals take the stress out of meal planning. You want to eat right. You need to eat right. It's a goal of yours to eat right, and yet you don't seem to ever have the time to be able to do it. And so what do? You end up just going through the drive-thru and ruining your diet every single week. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50. Lockedoncollege50 off, and get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code lockedoncollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off. Factor Meals, take the guesswork out of planning your meals. All right, one last thing from Kirby's presser as we head into spring practice and we get things going. As we said, Clint will be back. We're going to have lots more to talk about with this Georgia football team, about spring practice news, about things that we're looking for, things that we're interested in seeing, about players that we want to watch. We're going to talk about that Warren Brinson thing that I said earlier. But I felt like one of the most significant things that I heard out of Kirby Smart during this presser was that Monroe Freeling had the shoulder surgery in the offseason and is probably out for the entire spring. I'm not going to say probably. He is out for the entire spring. Now, you'll recall, if you've been listening to the position group episodes, we talked a lot about this offensive line. We think the offensive line is one of the most intriguing positions. We said that of all the players on Georgia's roster, one of the ones that they need to be elite is Ernest Green. We need Ernest Green to return to that level of elite play. Everyone is penciling in Ernest Green and Monroe Freeling as the 2 starting tackles on this team. If you will recall, Ernest Green, some injury concerns in the middle of the season. That's what the coaching staff is going to say. But he was benched, if you ask me. He was benched in favor of Monroe Freeling midway through the season. Monroe Freeling came in and played quite well. Clint and I were very happy with what we saw until the Sugar Bowl, when Monroe Freeling got absolutely whipped in the first half of that game. And I think Georgia's ineptitude on offense in the first half of that game, along with its failure to cover a kick, cost them the football game. Monroe Freeling gets benched in the Sugar Bowl. Ernest Green comes back in, and now Monroe Freeling has offseason shoulder surgery and is going to miss the entire spring. We said on the offensive line episode, do not be surprised if Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green are not the two starting tackles, even at the beginning of the season, much less by the end of the season. There are other guys on this roster who, although they have not earned playing time as of yet, are right there competing for these tackle spots. And now, all of a sudden, one of the tackle spots is wide open for the entire spring, which means everyone's going to be getting reps anyway because they're running 2s, 3s, 4s. But now even the reps of the ones, somebody's going to be that right tackle. Ernest Green's going to be the starting left. He's going to be getting reps with the ones at the left tackle spot. Somebody's going to be getting reps with the ones at the right tackle spot now, in addition to the 2s, 3s, and the 2s at left tackle and the 3s at left tackle. There's a lot of names to watch here. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds over the spring. Hewley is a name to watch. I like him a lot. Merriweather, Uini is a name to watch as well. There's a lot of names that we like a lot. I think Daniel Calhoun is more of an inside guy. Jaw Jackson is a raw but very physically gifted tackle who could be a name to watch. All these guys are going to be getting reps. And now you take Monroe Freeling out of the mix, and we could be looking at a situation where by the time Georgia opens fall camp, there is either a wide open competition for right tackle, or Monroe Freeling is already behind for right tackle snaps at the University of Georgia. If one of these guys really stands out, really asserts himself in the spring, do not be surprised if coming into fall camp, there'll still be competition. Kirby's not going to name any starters. It'll be wide open. But do not be surprised if Monroe Freeling is already behind. This is definitely a situation. Ask JT Daniels if when you get hurt, if it's possible to lose your starting job. This is definitely a situation where Monroe Freeling probably needed this spring to reestablish himself as a solid contributor on the offensive line for Georgia. He probably needed it as much as any player on the depth chart. And then Kirby comes out and says he had off-season shoulder surgery, which he had to have. He had a problem, had to have it fixed, and now he's going to miss the entirety of the spring. Look, I'm cheering for the kid. I hope he comes back stronger than ever. I hope he proves himself, because I want Georgia to have more good players instead of less good players. But I'm just here to tell you, it is very interesting to watch. It will be very interesting to watch over the next few weeks. Who's performing well at this tackle spot other than Ernest Green? We hope Ernest Green's performing well. Who's performing well? And will there be someone who will take such a step forward? Whether it's Merriweather, whether it's Hewley, whether it's somebody like that. Will there be somebody who takes such a step forward that they, by the time we get to fall, that they are taking reps with the ones at that right tackle spot? It'll be interesting to watch. I would not be surprised at all if Labor Day weekend, Georgia opens the season and Monroe Freeling is not in the starting lineup. I think he'll still contribute to this team. I think he will still be an important piece for Georgia. I would not be surprised at all if he's not in the starting lineup, because I think there's some talented guys behind him, and this spring is an opportunity for them to show that. All right. As I mentioned, we're going to be back the rest of the week with lots more to cover. Clint's going to be talking about other things from spring practice. We're going to be breaking down some freshmen and the freshmen that we think are going to have the biggest impact on the team. We're going to be covering the SEC tournament and how Georgia does there. And then after Sunday, we will know Georgia's first round matchup in the NCAA tournament, and we will be breaking down that matchup as well as Georgia's bracket and how things are shaping up for the Dogs and Mike White in the NCAA tournament. Guys, it's been 10 years, and this is the best Georgia basketball team we've had in well over 10 years. This team is way better than the team that we had 10 years ago. And so I hope you are enjoying it. I hope you're following it. I hope you're supporting the team. And we will be back later in the week with more, and we'll see you guys then.